Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Courtney and I'm very glad that you're joining us today because today I'm sitting down to discuss all of the books that I've read so far in 2025. Now, when I first sat down to make this video and I went into my Goodreads, I definitely got a little bit sad seeing how many books that I've read so far this year because I know in my head that I was way further along last year at this point, but I'm trying not to compare too much because I'm in a different place than I was last year and you know, things like that. So my reading goal for this year is to read 75 books in 2025 and right now I have read 10, which honestly that's not a bad number because that's still, if you divide it out, more than one book a month and I'm happy with that. But earlier in the year I was in a pretty heavy book slump, kind of on and off. I just really wasn't reading a whole bunch, and the past few months right after it hit springtime it's kind of picked up for me and I'm hoping that that energy carries on throughout the rest of the year. But that being said, let's go ahead and get into a few reading stats for this year. So like I said, I've read 10 books this year and of those books it was a 4.2 average rating. Honestly that seems high, but for me I don't usually rate things below a 3 unless they're absolutely terrible, and even at that point I'm probably going to DNF them and I don't rate DNF'd books. But yes, the average rating was 4.2. The total pages I've read so far is 3,727. 3 of those books were thrillers, 1 young adult mystery, 2 fantasy, 2 fiction, and 2 romance books. And of one of the fiction books, it was a DNF at 50%. So that's kind of what my reading is looking like this year. And that being said, we're going to go ahead and hop into the 10 books that I've read so far this year. Starting off, the first book that I read was for book club. It was our January pick, and that is First Lie Wins. This book follows Eve, and she has an odd job. She's a con artist, and she kind of works for a higher up, Mr. Smith. That's who she works for, and she doesn't know anything about Mr. Smith. Nobody that works in this organization knows anything about the head man. Throughout this book, we're following her as she completes one of her tasks, one of her missions, and to complete that task, she has to pretend to be the guy's girlfriend to kind of get him to trust her and get more information on him, but her feelings start to get involved, and that's where she messed up. She starts to have a soft spot for this man, and she's kind of wondering, like, do I want to turn him in? And Mr. Smith is threatening her because he knows that she feels this way. He's threatening to use her past against her if she doesn't get the job done. The only thing I didn't really like about this book, because I definitely liked the plot, it's interesting, and at the beginning it has that kind of secrecy, like going behind your back, sneaking around type of vibe, which was definitely cool. That sucked me in, but towards the end things were happening that just would not make sense in real life. Like, that would not fly, and I hate when that happens in a book where it's kind of like a loose end. I want a story to feel like it's happening to people in the real world, like it's actually happening. So when you leave loose ends like that, it shatters that. And also we got a lot of flashbacks, and usually I am a flashback person, but the way that we were getting them in this book I didn't really care for, so I rated it 3 stars. Okay, this is where things started to get a little bit exciting because at the end of 2024, I ended up tandem reading Powerful and Powerless. I had already read Powerless, so that was a reread. And after I read those two, I jumped into Reckless. And I was so excited to pick up Reckless because the way that Powerless ended was just like jaw on the floor. So in Reckless, it picks up right where Powerless basically ended off. Peyton has just committed treason, and so obviously our girl has got to be on the run. Kai has now come into his role as the enforcer since Kit has now become the king. This book is honestly just a complete mess. Like, things are just really going all over the place. But since Kit now is the king, he orders Kai, as his first mission as enforcer, to go get Peyton from the Scorches and bring her back to him alive. This book definitely shows us and tests Kai's loyalty to Kit for sure. It shows us how he feels about his relationship with Peyton and like how he feels so strongly about it that he would maybe even betray his brother. A lot of people said that this one was a filler book, and I can see why people would say that this is a filler book in the series, but I still enjoyed it. We got so much pining and kind of like stolen moments between Peyton and Kai, time that they really weren't supposed to have one another, so I cherished that so freaking much, and there's just so many scenes of that, of them really bonding with one another. Like, I think this is the book where they really fall in love with one another. Like, if they thought they were before, they definitely are in this. And they also coin a phrase in this, pretend, which I feel like is perfect for what they're doing. They're pretending like there aren't going to be consequences at the end of this, just soaking in the time with one another that they can. Obviously they know that it's going to have to come to an end at some point, but that's why I loved this book so much. Their relationship truly got so much deeper. And the ending to this that sets us up for Fearless, that was even more shocking to me than the ending of Powerless. Like, I did not think that that was going to happen. I didn't think that that was going to be Kit's solution to all of this. The only thing that I would say I wasn't an absolute fan of in this book is that when Peyton finally does cross the Scorches and Kai does as well, the kind of chase between them there for a moment was very repetitive, and that's probably like 50 to 100 pages of just that. Once they were together and stopped like that cat and mouse game, everything was fine, but that was a little bit boring. So I rated Reckless 4.5 stars. The next book I read was also for book club, and that was The One. This book is basically like Match.com meets science. Scientists have supposedly discovered a gene in your DNA that only one other person in the whole world has, making them your soulmate. In this book, we followed several different point of views. I think it's like 5 or 6 people, and it just shows their journey with this whole match DNA thing. If they want to do it and why, if they don't want to do it. Some people think that it would be really cool to know like who is their match. Others think that that's not what love and relationships is about, and it doesn't really matter if their partner is their match, like they would stay together anyways. People that are in relationships where one thinks that they might be the match and it doesn't matter, and the other one has been having serious doubts all along. It just is super interesting to see the way that these relationships unravel, because some of these people were making some absolutely crazy decisions. It was definitely twisty, I'll say that, because the people were acting so irrational over this DNA thing. There was one particular storyline that we were getting in this. I'm not gonna spoil it, but if you end up reading it, you'll know that mother-in-law was freaking crazy. But I feel like this book was raising a few questions as well, like if you are matched with someone and you're linked with them, what does that say about you if they're a terrible person? What if you never submit your DNA to get tested and you're always wondering if your spouse is your match, or if you could have a better connection with someone else out there that might have the same DNA match? This book was definitely thought-provoking, and I would say was a very good one for book club discussion, and I rated it 4 stars. Then I picked up Such a Fun Age. This book follows Amira, a young black woman, and she is a babysitter for a white family. She is babysitting, I think the daughter is like 4 or 5 years old, something along those lines. And she's been babysitting this child for a while. Like, she's become very close with the family and things like that. Like, everything is pretty good going, until one night she goes out late with this child to the grocery store and she gets racially profiled. Essentially, this Karen in the store thought that Amira was kidnapping the child that she was babysitting. That night in the grocery store set up for the rest of this book. It was following the relationship of Amira and the mother of the child, Alex. Alex basically just really wants to make the situation right. She feels bad that it happened on her watch, but the way that she's doing it is just way too much. Like, she's doing too much. She's being extremely pushy on Amira. What really gets this story shaken around is when someone from Alex's past comes into Amira's life and sheds a light on Alex's past and things that she has been involved in, things that she has done. All in all, I feel like it really brought up the conversation of like white people trying to bulldoze black feelings and trying to tell black people how to feel and what they should do and how they should react to situations, and what Amira's experience was going through all of that in a very public way. Another one that was really good for book club discussion, and I rated it 4 stars. After that, I kind of didn't read a whole lot for a few months, but when I did start back up reading, I picked up The Final Gambit. No, why did I say The Final Gambit? That's the last book in the series. I picked up The Inheritance Games. This is a young adult mystery novel by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I picked this book up because I had already read all of the Natural series and absolutely loved it. If you haven't read that series, you should definitely check it out. But in this book, we have Avery. She's just a girl who is in high school, you know, going about her daily life, doing what she does. Everything gets flipped upside down though when she gets left in a billionaire's inheritance. He leaves everything to her and she has no idea why. The billionaire in question is infamous for loving puzzles, riddles, anything like that. So the catch to Avery receiving this inheritance is that she has to live in the estate with his family for a month. Obviously, his family, who just got left out of their entire inheritance, is not very happy with her. And in that house lives 4 brothers that were the grandchildren of the man that passed away, and that just starts a whole nother circle of things. I love this book because it just had so many twists and turns. I loved the riddles in it. I just was always trying to figure out what the riddle was and trying to figure it out before the character did. And getting to know all of the grandsons was interesting because they all kind of have their own niche thing that they're good at, and seeing how those played into this book was interesting. I do want to know how it continues on. I haven't picked up any of the other books in the series. I definitely want to, because once we finally figured out what the mystery was in this book, it led directly into another one. So I know that it's going to carry on and probably go through all of the grandsons. But all in all, this was just a really quick book. It was a page turner that I just could not put down, and that was exactly what I needed to get out of a reading slump. So I rated it 4 stars. And then finally we hit the part of the year that was like the past 1 or so months, and I've just been reading like crazy. So the first thing that I picked up was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and this was actually my first 5-star of the year. I read Beach Read, I think, at the beach last year, and I really did not like it. Don't come for me if you're a Beach Read stan, because I know that so many people are, but that's exactly why I got discouraged. But then I picked up Funny Story last April, I think, and it was so freaking good. The banter, it was like reading an entirely different author, but clearly authors change as their writing goes on and they mature and develop new writing styles. So I just was so excited to be enjoying Emily Henry, and when I saw this one coming out, I knew that I had to read this one as well, and I'm so glad that I did. In Great Big Beautiful Life, we have Alice and Hayden, and they are both writers, and they both really want to write an heiress pop star princess's biography. So they find themselves on the same island, Little Crescent, and they are basically competing to write this biography. Margaret, who is the heiress of the Ives family, she invites them both to kind of do a trial run of interviews and things like that with her until she decides who she wants to write her biography. Throughout this book, we get so many flashbacks into the Ives lives and things like that, especially Margaret's particularly, but we do learn a lot about the Ives family, and I've always loved a flashback in books, and the way that this one was done was absolutely perfect. It never got boring to me. And also the banter of an Emily Henry book and what was happening between Hayden and Alice, the relationship they were forming, it kind of gave enemies to lovers, but in a soft kind of way, because Hayden opened up to Alice pretty quickly, and I loved Alice's personality. She just was so outgoing, and I love that about her. And then to see that relationship form and what happens at the end and the choices that Alice makes after working so hard to write this biography, it was amazing. And also seeing Alice tie everything together, because while Hayden and Alice are interviewing Margaret, they're both getting different pieces of information, and they're just trying to learn about her family the same way that we are as readers. And Alice does a fantastic job of putting pieces together, and that twist was so insane. So between the romance, the setting of this, I love Little Crescent so much, Margaret's family history and all of the flashbacks, just everything about this book was perfect, and I definitely recommend that you read this for the summertime, or really just any time, because like I said, this was my first 5-star of the year. Get your hands on this book immediately. Moving right along into another new release, I picked up Beg, Borrow, or Steal after Great Big Beautiful Life, and this one also was a 5-star read for me. Or I might have read these, I don't know what order I read these in, but either way, these were both 5-star books for me, and I love the When in Rome series. I've read all 3 of them now, and we do have a 4th one coming out, but I've read all 3 of the other books, and I've loved all 3 of them. There's something about a small town romance that no matter what is happening in the book, the small town is going to make it 10 times better. This one definitely is 100% like Gilmore Girls, just the way that the neighbors all know one another and are just so comfortable butting into other people's business, but in kind of a joking way. In this book we have Emily, and she is the oldest Walker sibling, and she's definitely the sibling that I relate to the most. She like has that kind of like feeling of responsibility to tie all of her siblings together. She also just bottles all of those feelings up of how much that overwhelms her, and like how she's lonely, and she just wants to make sure all of her siblings are okay, even if that means putting herself last. And I definitely resonate with that. And then we have Jack. Jack is someone that Emily met in college. They had a not so meet cute. It was definitely getting off on the wrong foot. Ever since they met though, they have been enemies. Emily has not let Jack get a break. They have competed all throughout school, and then even ended up working at the same elementary school, up until when this book starts. Jack had moved away and he ends up moving back into town, which completely shocks Emily, especially when he moves in next door to her. They're now neighbors and kind of have to find a way to live with one another. Honestly, you can tell throughout the book that there has been that attraction throughout the whole time they've known one another. We get snippets of emails and just different communications between them throughout the past 10 years, and it's clear that they cared about one another, but that rivalry was just getting in the middle of everything. But in this book, Emily really needs Jack's help. She has no one else that she can ask to help her with this, so she's really counting on him. They team up, and it's super fun getting to see that. That one was so relatable. Like, I could picture myself being there in all of the scenes. She definitely was telling instead of showing. She just described everything perfectly. Jack and Emily flirt with one another by kind of like being mean to one another and making fun of one another, and I just think that that's so funny and relatable to me. But Jack is genuinely a true sweetheart, and Emily comes to see that in this book. They have so many cute moments and just moments of reassuring one another in who they are and that everything's gonna be okay. I just love the way that their relationship formed. It truly felt like they were friends to lovers, even though this was enemies to lovers. And like I said, this was a 5-star read for me, so definitely check this one out as well. And this does happen over the summer now that I'm thinking about it, so add this one to your summer reading list. The next book that I read is We Used to Live Here, and this was like one of the craziest book club books that we've read so far. In this book we have a couple, Eve and Charlie. They flip houses and they've just moved into this really old house. One night when Charlie's at work, these strangers knock on the door and basically ask Eve if they can come in. The father lived there when he was growing up and kind of just wants to show his family around his childhood home. She doesn't want to let them in, but ultimately she ends up letting them inside, which clearly she shouldn't have, because things just start happening that are really weird after they show up. It's just the feeling that this book was giving was like, it was giving that eerie feeling of like walking into the room and the lamp being on and you're like, did I turn that on? Like, I must have. What other explanation is there? But you just have that eerie feeling. This book was giving that on 1,000. With all of these weird things happening, Eve really starts to question herself and her own sanity and what reality is around her. She starts questioning the people that she trusts around her, and this book was definitely creepy. Like, it was giving major creepy vibe, and the ending of this book was unlike anything that I've ever read. It just completely jumbled my mind up to even this point. I still don't really know exactly what happened at the end. Like, I have no clue, but looking back after finishing, there's definitely foreshadowing at the beginning as well, which just makes things even more uneasy for me. This is the type of book that like you enjoy but was nothing special, but it still kind of makes you want to reread it just to pick up on other clues. The only thing I didn't like is that we were getting kind of drawn out explanations that had nothing to do with the plot. This book will definitely get you thinking and questioning your own surroundings. I rated this one 3.5, but I definitely think if I reread it and like picked up on some more things that it could be a 4-star. The most recent book that I finished was Fearless, so I've officially finished the Powerless trilogy by Lauren Roberts. I don't even know how to feel about that. Like, I know that the novella is going to come out in September. That is so freaking long from now. It makes me so sad, but it does give me something to look forward to. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, at the end of Reckless, it definitely left on like this big jaw-dropping moment that I don't think any of us as readers saw coming, and that is what sets up for Fearless. So going into Fearless, Peyton now is taking the throne. She has been, you know, engaged to Kit, and she's just getting ready to come into this role that she doesn't really even want. And despite not even wanting this role, she still ends up having to compete in a set of trials that are designed specifically for her, just to prove herself to a kingdom that hates her, basically. There's also a lot of tension going on between Kit and Kai in this book. Kit just really hasn't been acting like himself ever since he became the king. He just has hardened a lot, and his demeanor has completely changed. Kai notices this change, but he also doesn't want to push him too much because their relationship is already strained because of Kai's relationship with Peyton. So there's just a lot of tightrope walking going on in this book, but we get a lot of stolen moments between Peyton and Kai again, which I just absolutely soaked up because you never know how the story is going to end. I was bracing myself for something bad to happen to Kai. We were learning so much as well in this book that just ties the whole entire series together. It just really made everything feel so much more complete, especially since throughout the Powerless series there usually are several things that are like going on at the same time, but you might not see it until in a different book. And the characters that we have in this book and the characters that we got to see and just different things, ultimately I felt really good about the way that the series ended. Obviously there were parts of it that I didn't like. I wish that they were different, but ultimately I think that it wrapped everything up really nicely, which is why I gave Fearless 5 stars as well. The last book I'll talk to you guys about is the book that I DNF'd, and that book was Chang All Stars. This was a book that we were reading for book club, and honestly I was super excited to read it because it definitely is an interesting plot. In this book we have Cape, which is a prison system, and the prisoners that are there are in links of chain gangs, and your chain is fighting in death matches in an arena, like a big pit in front of all of these people that want to see you die. This book was written in a way that was supposed to kind of focus on the current prison system and the need for reform, and it definitely focuses on that, but the book, the way it was written, was extremely unorganized, so confusing. It was so hard to read, which is ultimately why I did end up DNFing it. I feel like I was 200 pages in. I was more than 50% of the way through this book, and things just still weren't clicking. You know when you give a book a certain amount of grace for things to start making sense? That just wasn't happening. And also the characters, I feel like, weren't getting built up in the way like to really relate to them. There wasn't much to the character because there were so many different characters, and I feel like that definitely took away from the book. That's really the only thoughts that I have. I did think that it was an interesting like premise and a conversation that could have been had, but I think the opportunity was missed a little bit, and since I DNF'd this book, I did not rate it. But those are the 10 books that I have read so far this year. Like I said, definitely a little bit behind than where I was at last year at this point. If you read any of these books, let me know down below what you thought about them. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!